this method, what you have taught people, I believe you have written few books, and I know that. So can you tell me more about let's say one has to pick up one of your books, which one is that?
Well, I think the first book, which has come out in several other editions, and the most recent one is a much thicker book than the way it began. In Stillness, Conquer Fear was my contribution, I suppose, to helping other people who are experiencing anxiety, because I experienced 8 years of very acute anxiety, which was very life-limiting at the time and very potentially self-destroying. And we hear a lot these days about anxiety, whereas in those days it was really discussed or understood as a social issue. I felt extremely embarrassed by these anxious feelings and by the limitations it placed on my life. But having said that, it was one of the better things that happened to me, because it led me in this whole new direction.
Beautiful.
And opened up this work with people. Which
suffering can be a blessing.
Well, absolutely, and I think that's part of human learning too.
True.
Because we run from suffering, but it's not all bad.
Yeah. So, which years are we talking about?
We're talking about the late 60s and the early 1970s, yes.
So he was a pioneer at his time, you know.
He was an amazing pioneer. He was working like this from the late 50s.
Oh, really?
And his first book on this topic for the layperson was published in 1964, I think, Relief Without Drugs.
So I believe, Pauline, you saw him for your own treatment, for your anxiety, and it helped you, and then this calling came from within to teach it to others and help others with anxiety and stress, isn't it?
Well, that's right. I mean, I'd never discussed my situation with other friends or anything. I was very secretive about how I was feeling, because my husband knew, and as I said, I felt so embarrassed. But once I overcame it, I began to observe other people, and I could just sort of noticed that society was pretty stressed, and that's even a long time ago. I mean, look at it today, we're very stressed. So
everyone says the stress word. I couldn't believe even the kids talk about the stress all the time, you know. I'm so stressed. It's like such a common word now, you know. Everyone is stressed.
That's right, and it's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
So I thought, and then I think I kind of got the idea that there were other people out there with these similar problems. I wasn't the only person in the world who'd experienced this. So I put out a few feelers and made a few contacts, and I recognised that there was a small support group started for agoraphobic people, and I went and spoke to this group of people. And no, actually, I'm jumping ahead, because I'd actually published my story by then. And actually publishing my story was a pretty courageous thing to do, because I knew it was going to expose this vulnerability.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the sort of thing that makes us anxious. You know, we don't want that sort of thing. But it didn't make me anxious. It made me feel like Joan of Arc or something. I felt, well, I'm on a pilgrimage here. I'm going to really help other people, and that's my contribution to society.
Beautiful. That's good. So let's talk about your journey of teaching, and you started this center. Do you want to tell more about how it all went?
Well, I spoke to Dr Meares about it, and he just sort of said, well, in fact, he'd asked me to start teaching other people. I have to give him credit for that. He said, you should start showing other people what you've learned from me. So that was, I suppose, my first reassurance that perhaps I could actually do this. I approached the minister of the Uniting Church not far from here, and I knew him a little bit already, and he knew my husband, so we had a bit of a chat about what I was hoping to do. And I said, I need somewhere to do this. Do you have a hall? And he did have a small hall available that I was able to use. So I started in the church hall, and my book had been published, so there was quite a bit of promotion around that.
Yeah.
And I then visited this group that I discovered for agoraphobic people, and I talked to that group, and from that group quite a number of people booked in to start, and then of course word got out, and one thing led to another, and so the business gradually grew.
No, I think it's a very, very commendable job, and it's such a good work, and I think in this modern world it's much more meaningful, I believe. It was always meaningful, but now everyone is stressed, and I think it helps in even getting rid of the diseases, because most of the diseases, the origin comes from the stress, because with the stress we don't eat right stuff, and our lifestyle is mess.
Yes.
So any message to people who are listening to you, or who would like to know from your wisdom, what message do you want to give to people?
Well, I think the greatest message from me would be, we have to value our intuitive self a lot more than our rational self. I think that there's a lot of credence and importance given to statistics and the rational side of medicine, and yes, I understand why, and that's necessary, but I think that, many years ago, families would talk and gather and seek and learn wisdom from their elders and so on. They would trust the intuition and the wisdom of their families. They would communicate things. These days that doesn't happen so much. We're a nuclear family, and so many people on their mobile phones all the time, and
exactly right.
Yes, you and I use mobile phones, but hopefully we know when to put them down.
True.
And so on. So I think we have to value our humanity differently somehow. It starts with that sense of there is something more within the human being than the obvious, and then the rational and the logical. That we must listen to that spiritual self, really. And I'm not talking religion, I'm just talking about we all have various ways of practicing our spirituality, and that's really important. But I think the sense of humanity, being human, is really, really important. Recognizing our strengths and our weaknesses, and valuing those, and learning how to balance the two.
Beautiful, quite right. And I've seen that you have written few books for the children as well, who
Yes.
suffer from anxiety, and
Yes.
so what is your message to how to, about the upbringing of family and kids, as we just talked about, so they don't get into anxiety,
Well, you see, it's hard to say, isn't it?
It's a hard bit nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have 4 adult children and I have 11 grandchildren.
Oh, beautiful.
And so that's, a reasonable-sized family to think about, isn't it? And, of course they're all on their mobile phones, but hopefully not as much as some others. And hopefully with the right kind of interaction, not just the rubbish, I hope. I don't know, really. Who knows? Technology is a mixed blessing.
Correct.
Yes, but for children, look, I wrote Quiet Magic, which is a fantasy story for children, and kids actually love the story because it's a little bit of fun for them, and it's not teaching meditation in a way that's instructional. It's teaching meditation kind of subliminally, because they're journeying along with a little boy in the story who's having adventures, and I think that's a good way of connecting. And I'm hopeful that book will be republished with illustrations in the reasonably near future.
Oh, that would be nice. So it was really nice to talk to you, Pauline, and I love talking to you. You are the founder of Atma, Australian Teacher Meditation Australia.
Now known as Meditation Australia.
Now known as Meditation Australia, and you're a patron in that. So, and you have been teaching for more than 40 years now, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a blessing to all of us.
Well, thank you. It's been a lovely journey.
Thank you, Pauline. Nice
Thank you,
meeting you.
Sanjay.
Thank you.
Good.